Dylan Andrews heads to the transfer portal, which means UCLA must be recruiting or shopping around for a new guard. Who could it be? And what does it mean now that Dylan Andrews has left? All that and more on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. It's your team every day. And where we get started today, of course, as the little graphic says, it's portal chatter. All right, let's be a chatterbox about the transfer portal. The third UCLA Bruin to transfer out is Dylan Andrews, the highest profile, the biggest name, and according to the fans, maybe the much maligned Dylan Andrews, not because of off the court or on the court, but 3 years in, UCLA, if you listen in to Mick Cronin's big quote after the loss to Tennessee, would you take continuity or talent? Mick Cronin said he'd take talent. So for whatever it's worth, Dylan Andrews, who I don't want to be a big advocate to kick guys out and say, get packing, but it seemed clear that with UCLA on day one, day two, when some of the biggest names or players who are already planning to transfer, are already entering their names in the transfer portal, were reportedly interested in Donovan Dent. They're going to go check out DJ Thomas, right, from UNLV. Elliot Cadeau, they're heavily interested. That meant not everybody was coming back. It sucks to see one of Mick Cronin's recruits, a guy that could have been a 4-year guy. I'm not sure if that's always the best of looks, but if you're going from a sheer ability to get better, if you're going from can you upgrade talent-wise, sometimes situations are best for both parties if you get a better opportunity elsewhere. And if for Mick Cronin, he wants to keep his job at UCLA beyond next season, how do you improve from this year? All right. Because Mick Cronin and UCLA went from winning the Pac-12 and a couple of injuries away from going deep in the NCAA tournament to missing the tournament. A year where there's a lot of hype. I placed a lot of hype on this team. I know there are others that had high expectations after the NIL support came in. The Bruins brought in a lot of transfers, fell short in the first year of the Big Ten, and fell short in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Here we are, wondering how do they get better. So if you're looking for a truly just immediately get better, then yes, Dylan Andrews was maybe on the way out if it came down to playing time, if it came down to a coach telling him maybe you should head out. Maybe it was his own personal decision. I'm not inside the headspace of Dylan Andrews or Mick Cronin or the UCLA coaching staff, and I'm not going to try to be, okay? But Dylan Andrews heading to the portal, and as everything can be said, you can still always return. Doesn't seem like this is the case for any of the three Bruins. You can always return. Highly unlikely, but you can always return. Does Dylan Andrews heading to the portal mean Donovan Dent to UCLA confirmed? That's right. Donovan Dent. No, that's not what it means. But hey, if you look at it, you go back in the recruiting cycle. They're both juniors heading into their senior year. You could really go back in the what-if scenario if you take one over the other. But you always have to consider, hey, what's the academic standards of UCLA? What's the difference between someone coming out of high school, highly coveted, but also needs the grades to come into UCLA? And that part, when Dylan Andrews, when Donovan Dent were getting recruited to college, NIL was a little different, transfer portal was a little different, and UCLA was stacked, so Dylan Andrews wasn't needing to be relied upon for 30 minutes in his freshman campaign. Played close to 10 later in his freshman year, built into what we thought was going to be a great sophomore year heading into a junior year, and it didn't translate. But let's once again bring you back to Donovan Dent, who is going to get heavily recruited by Kentucky. That's what I've been reading. The problem is, or maybe the benefit, is Kentucky going deeper. You've got UCLA looking to find a way, as they're out of the tournament, to get a leg up on these teams who are currently set for their Sweet 16 games right now. All right. So the benefit of not being in the Sweet 16 for UCLA is that, hey, you can recruit and focus all your recruiting efforts on getting guys in the portal. Kentucky, they're trying to beat Tennessee for the third time this year. You look at the other SEC schools, they're going. Now the Big East, maybe with the new revenue sharing model and how they can construct rosters. I've been seeing little bits and pieces of articles about how these teams can turn into super teams, the Big East can, and revitalize their conference into what was one tier to a bigger, much deeper conference to compete with the Power 4, Power 5 in college basketball specifically. But UCLA, you got the time, you got the wherewithal. I saw Mick Cronin and Colin Cowherd today. I watched it, and I was like, Colin didn't really ask him anything UCLA specific. So it was a bit, from a UCLA perspective, fairly boring interview because they're all quotes we've heard Mick Cronin say before. But the key thing he said, in anything since the end of the tournament, he wants talent over continuity. Now you bring talent and continuity together, and you get a superstar. You bring in the Jaime Jaquez. You got the Tiger Campbells. You bring all those guys together. You keep the core, the talented core, continuity for a year, and then you bring in a little more talent, and maybe you upgrade. That means that's how UCLA is going to get better. You look at Dylan Andrews, and unfortunately, it's just not how it panned out. And these are his career numbers. 10 minutes per game, average 3 points per game. Let's look at Donovan Dent, just for an example, because the Bruins are going to be in on him. Will they win that battle? I'm not sure, but as a guy, UCLA should absolutely have as number one on their list. I've already talked about him, but now that the Bruins are seeing the end of a starting tenure for Dylan Andrews, a clear spot is needed, and the Bruins are heavily interested and must be getting one of these guys. Somebody must be coming. So Dent, in his first year, averaged 5 points per game, 34 games played, didn't play heavy minutes. Now, you see in year two, Dylan Andrews went to starting every game, 35 minutes a game, was the leading scorer for UCLA. Donovan Dent went from 5 points per game to 14 points per game. 3-point numbers improved. His rebounding numbers slightly improved. His assist numbers, his assist to turnover ratios, and his defense was vastly improved with the steals and the blocks. You go to year three, and that's where Dylan Andrews, despite starting majority of the games, saw a reduction in minutes, and the shooting numbers didn't vastly improve, and in most cases actually went down in some key categories. Donovan Dent, in his junior year, turned into the Mountain West Player of the Year, averaged 20 points per game, played the same amount of games, got his team to the tournament again, played more minutes, was heavily relied upon, and as a career shooter, Donovan Dent shoots over 50%, 36% from three, 73% free throw from the line, and gets to the line a lot, and is one of the best passers in the country. Over his career, Donovan Dent averages not exactly close to 5 assists per game, while averaging 13.5 to 14 points per game. And at this stage of his career, he can go put up 20 and plays elite defense. He had almost 50 steals for the second year in a row, 30 blocks. And you got that as a 6'2 guard potentially. Now that's not going to say that Kentucky might slide some more NIL. Cronin's going to have to bring him in. Can he get to the academic transfer, the rigors of that? Can he come over to UCLA? Would it have to come as a grad transfer or still as an undergrad? There's a lot of moving pieces here. And I've already thrown out the likes of Barrington Hargress, who would probably be a cheaper, maybe more simpler option. You have the UC system to the UC system from Riverside, and be cheaper for UCLA to bring in a guy that could also score 20, could also handle the ball and play along Sky Clark. Elliot Cadeau, a pass-first point guard, while he's from North Carolina, maybe an East Coast, maybe Eastern United States guy. Maybe he can bring him over, Mick Cronin can, to LA, to Westwood, pass first, and then you tell Sky Clark all season, hey, or off season, we want you to shoot the basketball because you can score and we know you can put up buckets. We need you to do that in your senior year. Okay, so you could either go after a pass first point guard in Cadeau. You could go after a cheaper UC to UC option, potentially. Haven't seen where Hargress could be, but that would be a bigger leap. Big West was very good mid-major basketball last year, but could be a bigger leap. Or you go after Dent. And Dent has to be number one, has to be a part of the top NIL package you put forth for any guy in a spot that you're of need and you're close to. Now, I've seen the Kentucky reports, he's best buds with Lamont Butler. He's a Riverside guy. Well, UCLA had a lot of Riverside connections from the Jalen Clarks, the Corona native, the one-time Bruin Devin Williams, who just entered the portal. They had some connections to the IE. Can they bring somebody from New Mexico with an Inland Empire connection, SoCal, that's in the UCLA recruiting region, over to UCLA? But in the end, with how much UCLA was interested in so many other players, Dylan Andrews was going to move on. And that's what it seemed clear to me after he did announce it, that he was going on. I wish him the best. I think we should all wish him the best. He He's seen a lot of UCLA basketball. He's seen the greatest moments in the last 2 to 3 year stretch with heartbreak, UCLA, what they should be looking like under Mick Cronin, the devastating recruiting cycle that maybe destroyed Mick Cronin's tenure. We'll find out. And then we mix in the fact that, hey, UCLA got things fixed in the transfer portal a little bit. They've got the core. It's expected that Clark's coming back. Daly's been advocate. I wouldn't see why. I've seen Bruin Report online say that Tyler Bilodeau signed a contract, but I wouldn't see an NIL deal that he's going to come back to UCLA. I don't see why any of those guys wouldn't. You put up big buckets. Cronin heavily used and utilized Bilodeau, Daly, and of course Sky Clark is one of Cronin's guys. Took a few years, but one of Cronin's guys to get to UCLA. Those three guys are expected. The question marks are Adai Mata and Sebastian Mack. Sebastian Mack, I think I'd like him to come. He's a different, he's a different weapon off the bench if he wants to be utilized in that role. And Mata, of course, as a center. The Bruins still need post players and they need a guard. They also need to replace the Kobe Johnson, Lazar Stefanovic role. Who can be that third wing that can play defense and be an elite, maybe not elite scorer, but a scorer? All things the Bruins have to look forward to in the transfer portal. We'll talk about more of that next on Locked On UCLA. You ever check your bank account and you're wondering, where did all my money go? Whether you're dining out, you're shopping online, you have to entertainment, you're like, man, let's just throw the card out there. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. I lost all my money. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO that gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, it's not just a budgeting app. It's complete financial command center. You track your accounts, your investments, your spending all in one place. You stop managing your money. And here's the key. You start building wealth. That's something huge in today's day and age. Instead of juggling these multiple apps thrown at you, you can be like, hey, Monarch checks the finances, tracks spendings, and you can plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Check it out with Monarch Money. So who could potentially be returning for UCLA? Well, Bilodeau's already reported from Bruin Report Online. I wouldn't see why he'd leave. Eric Daly expected. Guy Clark expected. Okay. But the question marks, and I haven't seen anything from Adai, and if you're going to ask a guy after they lost a game, like Mick Cronin, they're going to give you the frustrated, I don't know response. I don't want to deal with this right now in the heat of battle. You ask me something after I lose, I will tell you I am going to turn the place over and be frustrated, all right? Whether it's UCLA losing to Tennessee or me losing in a card game to my grandmother, right? I am going to go ballistic and be very frustrated because I like to win and be competitive and win at all costs. Maybe not quite there, but I like to compete. And in the heat of battle, when I've sat there and lost, you need that cool down period, okay? So asking a coach or a player if they're going to return, what their intentions are, always a little tough to deal with, tough to analyze as to what these players could turn into heading into what would be Adai Mata's junior season, all right? Now, the battle is, does Mata go back to Spain? Does he stay home? Does he not have to come back to school? Or from what Cronin's talked about, his parents know that it's more of a project. This is a different building project, him coming over to the States, going to UCLA, growing up and becoming maybe a better player, which is funny considering Cronin all he does, whether he was on Colin Cowherd or sitting there in other reporter press conferences, how much the pre-college coaching AAU system sucks and how in Europe they play club basketball and they develop so much more. But somehow in the scholastic NCAA, CIF, whatever high school system you use going to college, it's supposed to be better. Of course, the dream for most kids, if you're playing basketball and you have any hope of playing pro ball in the U.S., is to get to the NBA. I don't know what any of the hopes are for Adai Mata at this moment, but he could easily have a career in Europe, maybe compete for the Spanish national team and see how that goes. But he still needs to develop. There's no guarantee. And he was he is the highest rated recruit of that class from 2023 that's now heading into their third year, some of which have gone back home internationally. Some have gone on to their second school. Or for Adai Mata, the Bruins are trying to hold on to this mystery recruit that came in late in his freshman year. Like the Bruins went on a European trip and he couldn't even play with them. That's how late in the recruiting cycle Mata came in. Okay. So maybe his development's been a little bit delayed. And he blossomed and all of a sudden just burst on the scene in that Wisconsin game. And when he's in the game, he clearly makes a difference. I'd like to believe Adai Mata would come back. I have no information that says he's coming back or Mick Cronin saying that. There's still got to be an enhanced NIL deal to make sure he comes back, making an incentive for him to return, not go transfer elsewhere. Obviously, there are probably better schools that know how to utilize a 7-footer better than what Mick Cronin's used. Although he does see him in practice every day, you wonder, okay, is he ready? Can he play 20 to 25 minutes consistently? Cronin doesn't believe so. Mata's still getting sick. The Bruins had that bout with the norovirus, and Mata started his sophomore year off injured with the foot. So all he did was go in the gym and start pumping iron, working on the biceps that he was flexing for the UCLA fans in the scrimmage prior to the season, which we thought this team would be deep. They played a lot. It just didn't end up being talented enough in the backcourt, which means they need to keep Mata and go get a post. I'll talk about Magoon Guath on Friday in the next Locked On UCLA episode, a key San Diego State transfer that could be a UCLA Bruin. Not sure if that will be the case or if he's going to go SEC or if he's committed by then, but we'll talk about him if he's a potential. And then Sebastian Mack. So I was talking about whether Dylan Andrews or Sebastian Mack would be one, two, or neither would transfer. Since my last episode, where I talked about that in segment 2, Dylan Andrews has left. He's going to the transfer portal. And as of this moment, updating, refreshing, haven't seen anything about Sebastian Mack. It's like, okay, here we go. What does this mean? Mack would be still a solid fit, even if the Bruins go get Donovan Dent, right? You get a guy who can score at a high clip, who can pass it at a high clip and plays elite defense. You bring in Sky Clark or keep him and he can score. Mack, if he's okay being that 6th man, which he was okay this year, and still needs to grow and get better, sits there all off season, works on the 3-point shot, works on getting better just incrementally defensively, all right? He can get some steals, but he can get blown by sometimes, all right? If he comes off the bench, is that just like Energizer Bunny for the Bruins off the bench? I think that's still a good role for him. Him going to the cup, getting fouled, that's a good guy to bring off the bench where you're like, hey, I need somebody who's a bulldozer to get the basketball and get fouled. Now he needs a couple more tricks up his sleeve to continue to grow as a basketball player, to continue to grow as a UCLA Bruin, including a jump shot, maybe a step back jumper, rather than just head down north and south and wait for the refs to blow their whistles. I don't think any of these Big Ten refs are always going to give the whistles to Sebastian Mack. And some of his best games came with the combination of 3-point shooting, a couple made buckets, and some free throws. You bring that together and you get a 10 to 12 to 13 point per game scorer off the bench who can come off the bench and just go at your opponent's big man, at their guards, and get them into foul trouble. Probably better than some of the other teams' backup guards or third-string guards or whoever they have guarding Sebastian Mack. If he grows as a shooter, comes back, gets stronger, grows as a defender, then UCLA would have an elite guy heading into his 3rd year, and I think could show more promise than what other UCLA guards have done over the last couple of years. Maybe Dylan Andrews heading to his junior year, because Sebastian Mack is a different player, a different athlete, and what his part of the game is, ball dominant, goes after the hoop, attacks the rim. The one thing I'd like to change or see from Mick Cronin, game on the line, I don't want the ball in Sebastian Mack's hands. Maybe if you want to go after it and attack, but the ball cannot be in Sebastian Mack's hands, expecting him to go make a play when I think there's better ball dominant guys who can step back and shoot it or get to the cup that are just as athletic. Because the Mack attack did cost UCLA in a couple of games. Wasn't the worst possession against North Carolina, but I haven't seen it be all too successful when the game is on the line. That's a little too much from what I've seen in the first couple of seasons. That's where if you get a guy like Donovan Dent in his sophomore season, hit 3 game-winning layups at the end of games, some of which in Mountain West play, and then became the Mountain West Player of the Year. I think the goal for Sebastian Mack is to be the Big Ten 6th Player of the Year. That would be huge. Get him to be the 6th Player of the Year, grow, and that would be something. Now, if UCLA sees Mac go in the portal, then Cronin must be cooking up something or the ship's sinking real fast. All right, those are really the only two options. If all these guys are leaving, Cronin has to have something up his sleeve in the portal, or the ship is sinking and there's something off. Because the seat, it's not hot. It's warming a little bit. It's warming a little bit under Cronin. He's talkative. He's good. But at UCLA, it's been a few years. I mean, I know he went to a Sweet 16 a couple of seasons ago. But by the time the 2026 tournament comes around, it'll be 3 years since UCLA won the Pac-12 and got to a Sweet 16. And at some point, that wasn't enough for Steve Alford. The Final Four bought Cronin a lot of time. Getting to the Sweet 16, returning to the team, returning that same nucleus, bought him more time. Losing those guys and all of a sudden winning the Pac-12, it's like, okay, we're building. And then it just didn't go that way. So returning the key players, continuity mixed with talent can turn Mick Cronin into a strong defensive unit, a tough-minded squad, and older athletes can go play better in the NBA and make UCLA a title contender in 26. But they have to go bring the right players back with some growth and find the right targets. A post, a three, and another guard to replace your starter in Dylan Andrews, because I'm not sure if that's going to be Sebastian Mack's role next season, if he's still staying. No reports saying otherwise, but they got to grow as a team. Speaking of growing as a team, the UCLA women can show a lot more growth and maturity handling this part of the tournament. Last 2 seasons, they've lost in the Sweet 16. Losing to South Carolina, one they weren't favored to win. Playing LSU as the higher-seeded team. The Bruins, if they won, could have took on Caitlin Clark. Iowa got a lot of national viewership, instead fell short at the hands of Angel Reese and the LSU Tigers. And they still might have a rematch with LSU coming up, but first they got to battle Ole Miss in the Sweet 16, a Spokane regional. You win that, and you got yourself with one win to get yourself away from the Final Four, but still got to take care of business against the Rebels. What does that look like? We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. When it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. The ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds. It can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you go. Powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivers the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, everything in between, whatever you might face. Room for up to 8 people. The Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and the key here, even bigger memories. If you're exploring off-road trails, rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. All right, here we go. Wrapping things up. A Sweet 16 preview. The Bruins in Spokane. The last time the Bruins were as highly rated, a chance to go deep in the tournament. This many wins. All right, now they've gotten deeper than, say, the Sweet 16. They played in Spokane at one time, and it did not go well against Gonzaga. A heartbreak, yes, against the Zags. All right, long time ago when the Bruins had this many wins. So, trying to erase March Madness horror stories of years past. All right. The UCLA women, the number 1 overall seed, the number 1 team in the AP Top 25, and looking to be the team that takes the trophy. Well, if we remember last time, we remember a lot of things going on. 1, Juju Watkins out for the year, right? Tore ACL. Doesn't mean USC's done, but they also have a tough UConn team in their path. So the Bruins, the next few games, it gets increasingly tougher. You play Ole Miss, who we'll talk about in a moment. Then you play a potential winner of an LSU or an NC State. Equally tough matchups. To get to the Final Four, and where you'll play, in my mind, as I put in my bracket, UConn even prior to the Juju injury. Just to go against an angry South Carolina, Texas, Notre Dame, whoever it might be on the other side. That's looking 10 steps ahead. Let's get back to business, where the Bruins are just trying to get over those Sweet 16 demons of the last couple of years with this junior class in Corey Close. You win this one, and then you might get your chance for a rematch and revenge against Kim Mulkey and the LSU Tigers. Ole Miss, this is a team that I've looked at them, and they haven't really beaten the elite teams. They've beaten some pretty good teams. They're a solid club, but they're not a dominant team. Capable of pulling an upset. I don't think they could go all the way, even if they did something spectacular and shock the Bruins. But what is something that they do get that is very scary for UCLA? Ole Miss is top 20 in the country at turnovers forced. They sit at 19 with over 20 turnovers forced, close to 21 turnovers forced per game. And they get a good portion of their offense coming off points off turnovers. 20 points off turnovers per game, where they force almost 20 turnovers. And what does UCLA struggle with the most? It's taking care of the basketball, feeding Lauren Betts, and making sure that when Kiki Rice is not the one handling the basketball, that they're not a turnover machine. Sometimes it's Lauren Betts. Sometimes it is Kiki Rice. Other players have struggled. This is where you might see Ole Miss attack Alina Arnasalo if Corey Close has to go to her if Kiki Rice is in trouble. Those are things to look out for in this matchup, where Ole Miss prides itself on taking the basketball and ripping it away and turning that into offense. They almost literally did that against USC in the season opener when they were fully healthy, USC, in Paris, France. When I was like, I don't know if USC is that good. Well, they were good when they were fully healthy. And Ole Miss was right there with them and had a chance to tie, if not win, that game late. So what are some of the stars for this Ole Miss team? You think of Madison Scott, sits there averaging 47% from the field, 12 points per game, one of 4 Rebels that averaged 10 or more points per game on this team. All right, from Madison Scott, Candy Todd-Williams, Star Jacobs, and then, yeah, you keep going down the lineup. I didn't say all those names, but you'll notice there's a player who plays almost half the game coming off the bench, a familiar Bruin, Christine Iwala. Comes from UCLA, transferred to Ole Miss, and gets a lot more run time with the Rebels than she did with the Bruins, and this team is pretty stacked. UCLA is, you could think, where the Bruins grew and got deeper as a roster. That's where Janiah Barker's coming in. That's where Tamia Gardner is, and that's what makes this UCLA team different. Last year, they would have Iwala on the team. They were scrapping past 6-7 players, especially after Bessoir got injured early in the year. Another injury, players, prepping for post-basketball careers, injury retirements. Everything was going a little crazy last year in the offseason. And Corey Close did her job with high school international recruiting, in addition to the transfer portal, where she's been gifted some of the best recruits in the junior class, from Janiah Barker to Lauren Betts the last couple of off seasons. And if Charlize Ledger-Walker was healthy, I think this team would be darn near unbeatable. I would. So you still got to focus in. This is not, let me tell you, this is not Richmond. All right. This is, quite frankly, the opposite. All right. Richmond comes in there, they'd score. They had Dugan, who'd put up a lot of shots, one of the best shooting teams in the country. This is most likely to be an uglier game, lower scoring, and the Bruins are going to have to power and muscle their way to victory in what would be a lower scoring game. All right. It's not like Richmond was able to keep pace with the Bruins for 40 minutes. Offensively, Ole Miss is a much worse shooting team. They shoot 43% from the field, but they hold opponents to just 41% from the field. That's where their defense comes in, and you have Lauren Betts, one of the best in the country field goal percentage. And it's not just, because she's taller and bigger there. It's the footwork. It's everything where she gets in close. It's the feeding the ball to Betts, and when she gets close, finishing or hitting that elbow jumper once in a while and converting the free throw attempts that she most likely will get in this game, because Ole Miss is not going to let UCLA score 80 points. They will not win this game if UCLA scores 75. This game will have to be played in the 60s, low 70s at best for Ole Miss to have a chance in this game. So if the Bruins take care of the basketball, they can be counting their steps and going to the Elite Eight. But that's easier said than done for this team that has come in and on numerous occasions against bad, decent, good, great teams just turned it over. Now, they've been able to turn over teams still, yet UCLA has had a turnover problem at times. So this is not a team in Ole Miss that is going to rain it from downtown. They do have a couple of players like a KK Deans who comes in and can shoot some threes, but it's not like Richmond who come in three, shoot. They have a couple of players. They diversify the scoring. It's pretty balanced between the top part of their lineup, and they average about 75 points per game. I just don't think if UCLA is scoring 75 in this game, Ole Miss has a chance. So the barometer here for UCLA, keys to success. They can win while turning it over a lot. UCLA can, but they keep the number. If they keep it under 12, UCLA is going to win this game by a lot. If they keep the turnover number to under 15, still a high number, but under 15, UCLA will be in the Elite Eight. Under 15 and score 75. Then you'll see the Bruins in the Elite Eight. If they're the first to 70 and get under 12, most likely going to win this game by a lot of points. Okay? It's less individual based for the Bruins. It's who steps up, because they got a lot of players who can score, much deeper than Ole Miss. It's can they take care of the basketball? It's a team-wide thing. Do they show up? And if Ole Miss, with the proverbial punch in the mouth, it's all right, just knock them out. Like, oh, when they take that first swing, can they handle the physicality? Can they handle the defense Ole Miss will bring? And UCLA, in the second part of the season, did struggle to get Lauren Betts the basketball quite a bit. And I think Ole Miss might come out hot in this game. They might shoot the ball better than the numbers dictate as a team. Ole Miss shoots it 30% from three. They only allow 30% from three, but that is not an elite percentage. Elite defensively, not elite offensively. I think Ole Miss might come out red hot like Richmond did in the first quarter, and then the scoring might just dissipate. And the Bruins have to be ready for that lower scoring game where it might be closer than one might expect. But Ole Miss does not have the scoring to compete with the UCLA team that can be free-flowing and can score on their way to an Elite Eight. UCLA should win this matchup, but it will prepare them for what a physical matchup it could be against LSU. I think this would be a good prep for LSU, not because they have an Anissa Morrow-esque or a Johnson-esque player, but just the physicality and the readiness to play a matchup like that. NC State, that poses a whole nother challenge in the Elite Eight if the Bruins get there, and that's the matchup. Beyond just getting to the Final Four and everything. So big matchup for the Bruins Friday night in Spokane. I expect them to take care of business. Look for them to have under 15 turnovers, key to victory, and get to 75 points. It's a lot of points I'm asking for the Bruins, but they can do it, and that would be the key to victory. There's many ways they can win that game where they don't get to 75, they turn it over a lot, but if you don't want to sweat, if you don't want to stress, get under those numbers, and it should be an easy going. Otherwise, we might be sweating in the Sweet 16, okay? All right, here we go, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. It's time to wrap things up when it comes to the big men who UCLA should target. We'll talk about that in the next Locked On UCLA episode. Spring practice is around the corner, and we will react to the UCLA-Ole Miss matchup on that Friday night. I will do an episode right after the game, and we'll be excited and pumped up for the Bruins, hopefully heading to the Elite Eight. Until then, hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.